Good evening. This meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of East Ridge will now come to order for June the 2nd, 2025. And if I could get a roll call, please.
Chairperson Tuggle,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Howe,
Here.
Commission Member Cornelius, Commission Member Williams, here. Commission Member Witt.
Here.
Thank you. And I believe we have a copy of the minutes from May 5th. I'm not sure if it's included in the packet. Has anybody received that? If you had an opportunity to review, I don't think it's in our packet. You have it?
I have it.
You do have it? I don't have it. Okay. In that case, as long as y'all have it, y'all can make motions.
Yeah, it was sent as a separate email too. That's why I put mine at home.
Since you printed it home, you can tell us if it's good. I'll entertain a motion from those of you who have copies of the minutes.
I read it at home. Does that count?
Perfect. Counts for me.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Howe,
Yes.
Commission Member Cornelius, Commission Member Williams,
Yes.
Commission Member Witt,
Yes.
Chairperson Tuggle.
Yes. All right. So this time we actually will do the communications comments by the public in order since there's just one agenda item. So if there's anybody who would like to come and speak either for or against this item, you can approach the lectern now. And if you're the applicant or the city representative, we'll get to you in just a moment. So if there's anybody else who wants to give feedback, it's your chance. Come on up. And if you can talk to the microphone, please. And when you do, if you can give your name and address for the court record, or for the, no, my apologies, for the city clerk. I'm not a judge.
My name is Stevie Schultz. I'm at 1017 Greens Lake Road, down the road from the rezoning request, and I'm just here to kind of hear what the request is. It's kind of a dangerous intersection there, and so, you know, we have a house, few houses down, small child, there's no sidewalks on that road, so the idea of a commercial property there is concerning, and I would want to have a lot more information about it as a neighbor.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else, we can move into the next agenda item. There is no old business. So for new business, 6A is to consider the request of Michael Jang to have the property located at 101 Kingwood Circle, property tax ID number 168EK003, rezoned from R1 Residential District to C2 C2 General Commercial District. Mr. Howell.
Yes, member of the Planning Commission. I have a brief overview of this, and I've also, staff has compiled a compatibility challenges for you that's in your packet. So to begin this, the existing land use includes single-family residential areas to the east, south, west along Kingwood Drive, featuring 1- and 2-story single-family dwellings on individual lots and commercial zones to the north of the site. The zoning history for the area, particularly 104 Kingwood Drive, was rezoned from C2 to R1 to preserve an existing single-family dwelling within a residential neighborhood. The C2 commercial district permits residential uses. However, a primary business must be established as outlined under permitted uses within the C2 to allow for this. Approving a C2 zone will set a precedent for future requests to extend the C2 zone south along Kingwood Drive adjacent to primary residential streets. Staff found the following compatibility challenges: land use and comparability. The proposed and surrounding is surrounded on 3 sides, east, south, and west, by single-family residential homes. Introduction of commercial zone to this area disrupts the established residential character and may lead to use conflicts between commercial and residential activities, such as increased traffic, noise, and transient occupancy. Neighborhood character. The existing character of Kingwood Drive is that of a low-density, quiet residential neighborhood. Rezoning to a C2 could undermine the character and set a precedent for future commercial development encroachment, leading into a gradual erosion of their neighborhood's residential integrity. Zoning consistency. A prior decision to rezone 104 Kingwood Drive from C2 to R1 specifically aimed at reinforcing residential consistency. Lack of primary commercial use. The C2 district permits a residential use only when there is a secondary to a primary business. The applicant's intent to use the property solely for a short-term vacation rental does not align with the C2 core purpose, creating a use conflict within the zoning classification itself. spot zoning concerns. Rezoning a single lot in the middle of a residential block for non-residential purposes, spot zoning, which is generally discouraged unless clearly supported by a broader planning strategy or public benefit. These compatibility issues suggest that the request is inconsistent with surrounding land use, establishing zoning patterns and community planning objectives.
Thank you, sir. I was prepared to argue with you on several things, and I realized I was looking at the wrong property, so I'm inclined to agree with you now. However, I did have a question about number 4, the lack of primary commercial use. So what is the minimum zoning required to be approved for short stay? Can you refresh my memory on that?
Zonings that allow short-term vacation rentals. So the zonings, I'll start with the zonings that do not allow, R1, RT1, and RZ1.
Okay.
The remaining zoning districts that do allow residential uses would be like your C4s, your C2s, if there is a primary business located within that building.
Sure.
So, yes. So things of that nature. Any other district that allows a residential use and if a primary business occupies that as well, it is permitted to use this as a short-term vacation rental.
But an R2, for example, would have allowed that.
R2 would allow a short-term vacation rental.
And since this is somewhat technical, and so I'd rather ask you than the applicant, do you know the motivation for trying to get C2 instead of an R2 or something like that?
I do not.
Okay, sorry. I thought I'd try.
The property is, to clarify, it is a single-family residence, not a duplex.
To my knowledge, it's zone R1. It is a single-family residential. I don't know if there's 2 meters on the property or.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
So I do have one. So the 104 Kingwood that was rezoned back to R1, that is directly across the street, is that correct?
That is
Kingwood
correct.
Drive
That is correct.
from this property?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So all of the properties on the other side of the street are R1.
That is correct. Yeah, there's no C2 contiguous with this this particular property. I know in the application it submits that they're in close proximity, but it's not contiguous to it.
Yeah.
And
and
my
I would-
question was, the only one that was previously was right across the street, and now it's been rezoned from C2 back to R1.
That is 100% correct, yes.
Yeah, and I was confusing it with the R3 that's part of the old motor lodge, and so I had a whole different set of things in my head.
There was a motor lodge there?
There was. That's what all that is. That old restaurant and everything is part of a motor lodge in the 50s and 60s. That's why they all look the same. Okay, thank you. Applicant, if a representative from the applicant would like to approach, and if you can also give your name and address, please, for the recording.
Thank you. My name is Michael Zhang, and address 101 Kingwood Drive in East Ridge. So good evening to the Planning Commission members and city staff and neighbours. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's my first time participating in a forum here. So as mentioned, I'm here to respectfully request that my property be rezoned from the R1 to C2 for the purpose of operating a professionally managed short-term vacation rental. And this is not a proposal for a storefront, retail business, or anything disruptive to the residential character of our neighborhood. This request is specifically and narrowly for a short-term rental that is well managed, quiet, and residential in feel. And I'd like to share a few reasons this proposal is thoughtful and responsible. Zoning compatibility, having heard what was discussed already, the property sits directly across the street from existing C2 zoning. So this rezoning would not be spot zoning. Initially, I had wanted to apply for the R2 zoning, but I was told that it's spot zoning. So that's something that I did not decide to do. So it's a natural extension of the existing commercial district and fits into the character of Kingwood Drive as a transitional corridor, although I do understand the compatibility concerns raised earlier. Secondly, required business compliance. The City of East Ridge requires that short-term rentals in C2 zones be operated as part of a primary business. To meet that requirement, I would operate this rental through my real estate investment company, which, if this rezoning request is approved, will be registered with the state of Tennessee and the City of East Ridge, and the rental itself will be one of the properties under that business umbrella. professional oversight. Management of the rental would be handled by PMI Chattanooga, a professional property management firm that specializes in rental properties. They would enforce strict guest limits, screening, quiet hours, and neighborhood rules 24/7. In terms of residential look and feel, while we would plan to make cosmetic exterior improvements like landscaping and general repairs, there would be no signage, no commercial branding, and no significant changes to the residential appearance of the home. It will remain a home, not a business storefront. In relation to parking and traffic, the property includes ample space for off-street parking, and we anticipate no increase in traffic beyond what you'd expect from a typical single-family residence. Relative to community stewardship, this would be a clean, professionally managed home that reflects well in the neighborhood and contributes to the local economy through tourism taxes and guest spending. As a local property owner working with a professional property management, my goal is to ensure that this home enhances, not disrupts the community around it. I understand that neighbors and the Planning Commission and city staff may have concerns about this change, and I also now understand there's a previous rezoning the other way around, which adds further context to any concerns raised today. But I want to assure everyone that I'm committed to operating this property in a way that upholds the values and expectations of this community. So in that spirit, I'm open to accepting any reasonable conditions, covenants, or use limitations that the Planning Commission or City Council deems appropriate, whether through ordinance, recorded agreements, or conditional use standards, to ensure that the scope of activity at this property remains consistent with what I've described today, a quiet, well-managed short-term rental that fits within the character of this neighborhood. And I want to thank everyone for considering my request, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. First of all, you said it would not have another business. It would just be operating a short stay, right? There'd be nothing else operating.
I was told that I have to operate a primary business. So what I would do is operate a remote property investment company through that as it's a remote. So, it can be operated kind of like a working from home sort of a setting. So that would be the primary business there, even though it's not a storefront or any sort of, business in that regard, that it would still be operated there to meet the requirements of the C2 zoning. And the short-term rental would be a rental within that investment company.
Sure.
You don't plan to reside there?
No.
So it would be 100% rented out.
So say again?
So it would be 100% rented out.
Yes, it would be rented out, other than meeting the business requirement of operating there, which I would do.
Do you currently live there?
No, not currently.
Okay.
Do you currently rent it out?
Had been renting it out, and haven't been renting it out, just been fixing it and looking at the next step. And this was one of the next steps that we discussed with my property management company, which I have representation here today. If you have any questions about that, happy to answer those as well. Also, if there are other ways of doing this that don't require C2, I'm happy to entertain them if there's going to be a vote against this today.
No, I think it's an elegant way of avoiding the spot zone concerns. I was just concerned about the lack of primary use, but I don't know if that's the anchor for his property investment company. I do think that fits the requirement if there's no other actual residential use happening other than commercial use. This would be a good time to have city attorney here, but it makes sense to me. Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Howell, just to clarify, C2 doesn't currently explicitly allow for an STVR, correct?
It does not.
Okay.
But you have to have It is an allowable zoning if you were to apply for STVR.
If there's a primary business within that
Right.
zone, yes.
Is going to ask a slightly dumber question. Since this would be zone commercial and he's going to base his investment company there, it wouldn't need to be a condition that an investment company, or that a company continue to be based there, because that is a condition of it being C2 anyway, right? So codes enforcement would essentially handle that anyway. If people began living there and it was raised that it was becoming residential and not a business, then that would just be a violation of C2. So we wouldn't have to make a restriction saying a business continue operating, because that's the nature of C2 to begin with.
So if the body wanted to place some sort of condition on it, I would definitely place it that no other, permitted use within the C2. At that point, you would degrade the R1 residential around it. If you accepted the
Oh,
C2
sure.
with all the permitted uses involved, then you're introducing.
It could only be
Yeah.
commercial residential
Yes.
with an anchoring investment property company, et cetera.
That's
Okay,
correct.
I see.
And I don't want to disrupt the neighborhood feel at all. That's why I'm raising that. I want those conditions if that's something that you can approve
No,
today.
absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And only one of your neighbors seemed to have questions. I don't think anybody was riotously against it. I appreciate you making the effort. It's just trying to figure out the best interest of preserving the
I
neighborhood.
fully understand.
I make a motion to decline.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the request and a second. And as a reminder, a vote of yes would be to deny the request. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Sorry, Vice Chairperson Howe,
Yes.
Commission Member Cornelius, Commission Member Williams,
Yes.
Commission Member Witt,
Yes.
Chairperson Tuggle.
No. All right, there being no further new business, this meeting is adjourned. If you would like to speak with Mr. Howell about your alternatives and the next steps.
Okay, thank
Thank
you very much.